At the beginning, first impressions. It was a rainy evening in an old part of London. Among the rush of people, a solitary man walked slowly. Daniel. His life had been the same for years. Work, coming home, and spending his evenings in solitude. That was until he stopped in front of a bookstore window that night. Inside, sitting on an old wooden chair, was a woman reading a book. Eleanor. She lifted her head slightly, and their eyes met. In that moment, time seemed to freeze. There was something in her eyes, something inexplicable, yet deeply piercing. Daniel entered the bookstore with a random excuse. The book he picked didn't matter. All that mattered was standing close to her for a few more minutes. And so their story began. 2. A deepening connection, when souls meet. Eleanor was different. The way she spoke, the way she thought, even her silences, everything about her was unlike anyone Daniel had ever met. With her, he felt understood, perhaps for the first time in his life. They spent long nights talking about art, life, and people. Both were lonely souls lost in the crowds. Daniel could sit beside her for hours without saying a word, and yet it would feel as if everything had been spoken. But as with all beautiful things, their story too reached a turning point. 3. An unexpected farewell, silent goodbyes. One day, Eleanor didn't show up at their usual meeting spot. The next day, she was absent again. She didn't answer calls, and Daniel didn't even know where she lived. Days turned into weeks. He visited the old bookstore every evening, hoping to see her again, but she was gone, vanished as if she had never existed. Time passed, people changed, but the feeling, that feeling he had the first time he looked into her eyes, never faded. IV, the truth revealed years later. 12 years went by. Daniel was no longer the same man. One afternoon, while browsing an old bookshop, he came across a dusty journal. As he opened it, he found a sentence written in trembling handwriting on the first page. "Don't look for me, Daniel. I was never meant to stay." And at that moment, everything became clear. Perhaps Eleanor had been sick, or perhaps she had no choice but to leave. But no matter what, Daniel had never loved anyone the way he loved her. And maybe true love is the one that remains incomplete, the love that lingers in your heart forever. Love is sometimes about holding without touching, and sometimes about remembering through just a single written line. If this story moved you, subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts in the comments. For more unforgettable love stories, stay tuned.